We are live. We are live. First of all, I just want to say thank you for your patience, for joining me on the show. We tried it on Instagram, but Instagram just was misbehaving. Do you know what I mean?
Mhm.
Thank you for joining me. So this is it, guys. Just to let you know, this is a student social work student week where we get your questions answered. And I've got someone very brave who's going to introduce herself in a moment, um, with her questions and who she is about and what's going on, what stage are you in the studies. We want to know everything about you ish, um, and tell us how your studies are going. In fact, we'll get into it a little bit about how you're getting on with your studies as well. But welcome to the show. Please introduce yourself.
Hi, everybody. My name is Jay, and I am a social work student currently studying at university. I am in my second year, and I am currently on placement in a non-statutory environment. Yeah.
How was it? How was it?
It can be very slow. I will say that. The
Yeah.
environment is very fast-paced. Um, I have to use time. So that means any opportunities that are kind of thrown at me, I need to take them, because as we all know, any social work students know out there, we have to make sure we meet our competencies. And
Mm,
sometimes you can feel in a non-statutory placement that you won't achieve them, but there are opportunities.
mm,
Yeah.
lovely. And just a quick one. Why social work?
Um. Okay, so I'm coming from a clinical background initially, and due to various circumstances, life experiences, um, my life took a U-turn, and I feel like I relate more to the social sector more than the medical sector. You know, um, the way I am as a person, I feel like the medical sector just wasn't sitting well with me in terms of you go in, you have one goal, is to treat the patient. Sometimes they say care is holistic, but there is a lot of restrictions in terms of how holistic you can be. You
Yeah.
don't really get people, you don't get a chance to really know their background. You just get a handover sheet, and on the sheet read just the patient, the diagnosis, and how they've been doing in the day. I like to be able to involve in people's progress and to see
Mm,
where they're coming from and where they're going to. So that was one of the main reasons why I wanted to go into social work.
yeah. Excellent. So you've been brave and you've joined us on this QA. Tell me, um, how should we go about this? We could say you could just fire away with your questions. That would be good.
Okay. All right, cool.
Go for it. What's your first question?
So my first question was for newly qualified social workers, um, long term, social workers in the field. How do I take advantage of my non statutory placement? That was my question. And the reason behind this is because it can be very slow. And I know eventually I'll be transitioning into a statutory environment. And I would like to know how hard, if anybody has been in a non statutory placement, how hard is the transition to go into a statutory environment?
Yeah. Um, it's unfortunate in a way, but there's pros and cons to it. I guess maybe if you want to write some of it down, it's up to you. I'm sure you've got a pen and paper down below that I can't see. But there's pros and cons. The pros are that you get possibly to do your coursework whilst you're there,
Mm,
right? And in a sense, the most important thing is that you get your degree.
mhm,
So imagine if you've got children, like I did. So on one of my placements, I had the opportunity to do my coursework because there were down times, you know. The other side of it is that you can actually focus on learning.
mhm,
And when you're doing your when you're building your portfolio, you will have a lot more time to reflect on what you can learn. And believe me, you can learn in a slow or fast paced environment.
Mhm.
So in some ways, you're kind of fortunate because you don't have crazy pressure plus your practice educator time,
Mhm.
and doing that job, you can reflect on. And I guess, was you in placement today?
No, I do Wednesday to Thursday. Sorry, Wednesday to Friday.
Wednesday to Friday. Okay. And when you're looking at your day, you can literally, and it's important to kind of document what part of the PCF you're covering.
Mhm.
And there's learning for a lot of them if you are actively looking for learning opportunities, And it could be simply observation or an interaction. What PCF did you cover? What did you learn? And a question for you as well. How are you good at how good are you at reflection?
My practice educator feels like I'm very good at reflection.
Yeah.
Um, I usually how I tend to reflect on is things that I feel that are not going so well. That's my
Yeah.
easiest for me personally, not what's gone well in the day. Maybe if I did something that I could have improved on,
Yeah.
or I saw something that I didn't like, how did it
Yeah.
make me feel? And that's where I would just reflect.
Yeah. Yeah. So to make the most of it, it's really just, well, what do you need to cover? What work do you need to do? And put that work into picking up points from every interaction, because you're going to need that skill when you go into statutory. So we'll move into that in a second.
Mhm.
Um, if you're looking at the opportunity then to say, learning how to say, can I do more? Just to get a better picture, what is your charity support?
So, my project that I'm at is for service users that have mental health and that need rehabilitation in order to return back to the community as an independent individual. So, ideally, the
Right.
organization on a whole deal with homelessness, but they do have subsections, which could be, drug, alcohol abuse. It could be domestic violence. There's so many different sections that they have to cover, but ultimately, to meet the criteria
Mm,
to access these services, you would have to be homeless.
right. So you're working with adults and
I,
support. Yep, and supporting them back into independence. Yeah, I did the same thing as well for my first placement, and it is slower than local authority or statutory work. But what you will learn to do is build the relationships with the service users, and that's a lot of learning there, because that skill you're going to really need depending on what type of social work you want to go into. Do you know what type of social work you want to go into?
if I'm going to be honest, no. I'm going to
Okay.
say confidently because I believe that I need to embark on my journey first before I actually say where I want to be. It's all good and well. We had a prior conversation, if you remember. It's
Mm,
all for me thinking that I want to go somewhere, but if I haven't got the experience or even just, a day to see what people are doing in that field, how do I know where I want to be? But ideally, in the long term, I've always wanted to be adults. I say that now. I might change my mind when I start, so who knows?
yeah, and you get to choose. But more importantly, I mean, everyone that you work with in those environments, you can take those skills. So you could say, well, look, the biggest thing that I can get my teeth into here is learning how to work with.
Mhm,
So grab
mhm.
that real, and get stuck in. You're probably doing that anyway, I'm not sure, but get stuck into what you do have in your hand. And I guess that's one of the biggest lessons is, what do you have in your hand? You have service users, you've got the opportunity to help them build relationships, and you've got the time to reflect. With those in your hand, you can build your portfolio for that first placement quite well. But dive in deep. And if you don't think you're going deep enough, then ask if you can.
Mm-hmm.
The cons, okay, so the main difference is the statutory processes, which is what, to be fair, which is what you are missing out on.
Mm-hmm.
And that is frustrating. But I know that I'm guessing probably that your university could have done a better job in finding your placement, right? I'm making assumptions here. So you're missing out on some of the statutory, but you don't need to worry too much because once you're qualified, the workforce is so short that they will take you on and teach you how to do what you've got to do. So don't worry too much about that. You'll be fine. You know, um, you're missing out on a lot of pressure.
Mm.
There's pros and cons to that. The pros is that you get to keep yourself together for now.
Mm.
The cons is that it's an adjustment when you hit statutory, but then you don't have to go into statutory if you don't want to. You can
Mm-hmm.
go and stay in the private sector. So it's not all bad. It's just you might say, look, in the private sector, it's a bit easier to be fair, which is where you are. And for the sake of peace of mind, you might want to stay there.
Mm.
So don't think you have to go into local authority at all.
Mm-hmm.
You go where you want to go. I
It's,
don't know how much. Yeah, go on. Sorry.
sorry to cut you. It's interesting that you say that because when I speak to, the educators within my service, they highlight that in prior years, a lot of people just wanted to avoid the private sector because of the stigma that it has. A lot of people that qualify, they assume that they have to be in statutory. That's a lot of, people just assume, if I do statutory, I'm going to be sought after, or I'm going to have good longevity in my work. I'm not going to, if I don't know if you get where I'm coming from. So now they were saying that they have the ASYE program within my organization. They didn't offer it before. So it gives hope to a lot of the social workers that are on placement within my organization at the moment, because actually some of us have been told, why don't you do locum? Not as a social worker, but maybe as, a support worker at the moment, with hopes that we will stay. But like you said, it is a more laid back environment and some people do want a challenge. I mean, for me, that's one of my, in terms of reflection, that's something that I definitely want to do. I want to kind of jump in. I want to be challenged, you know. I feel like sometimes when I'm within my placement, I'm not being challenged enough, even when the opportunities are being thrown at me. So hopefully, fingers crossed, I can have that experience in the long term. But the private sector, when we were at uni, we did have some seminars where people came in and, they spoke to us and told us about the private sector. But at the time, they kind of shed a real negative light on it, actually. It was never like, you should come to the private sector. It was more so, you'll do better off in the statutory environment in terms of understanding the processes and stuff like that. They kind of, I don't want to really say too much, but it was more so about, what they were telling us was more so about money rather than the actual processes. And as students, it was more like, we're here to learn, we're on a degree right now, and the ultimate aim for this is to be qualified and to get a job. I know, speaking from, like, for example, my RDP teachers, the worst thing you can do apparently as a social work student is think of the money. You'll fail. That's what we've been told. We have to learn first, step into the role, and then obviously money is an issue, but it was like, when we were being introduced to the sector, that literally was the complete message that we was getting. You'll go there, but you're not going to be paid as well. You'll go there, you might apply for a job in a statutory after, they might not accept you. Didn't understand it. So when I went into this placement, I was really sad. I was so sad on my first week. I was like, oh, so when I, do my SYE, are people going to look at me and want me to join their organizations, considering I'm coming from a charity, or are my colleagues going to have an upper hand because they've been on their statutory placements? But as time's gone by, I've kind of realized, like you said, there is a real need for social workers. So this stigma, I don't know why there is that stigma that exists, but I feel like as students, it would definitely be important to not listen to the stigmas, especially considering we're students. For me personally, that's something that I've had to reflect on, listening to people's opinions, making sure that I have my own experiences before I make an assumption. And currently, I would say what I've seen in this environment is it can be hard. It can be hard. Depending on where you are, it can be hard. I am in a high support needs environment. The mental health needs of these individuals can be quite challenging. I mean, the flip side is with statutory, from what I hear from people that are, practicing social workers, in the statutory side of things, it's a bit more paperwork that's involved. There's a lot more referrals involved. Sometimes I don't know if it's true, but you might not have enough time to speak to your families the way that they would in the charity environment. So I kind of have that freedom to speak to my service users, understand them from day to day, and actually to monitor them, because I can see the changes day in and day out, if that makes sense. But I'm not going to be discouraged. I don't think I'm going to be discouraged.
No, you don't need to be. And I guess, even if it was mostly true what they were saying, you don't know where you're going to be tomorrow, and you can't let people prescribe your future based on their fears. And that is a piece of reflection right there. I'm sure if you talk to some of your service users, they'll be like, they've got some mental health challenges because of what people have put on them, probably primarily their parents. And so the reflection is like, well, actually, like for me, my path, I shouldn't be here as a social worker, even myself. I've got an interest in history, and statistically, I shouldn't be here. What am I doing here? What am I even doing on this platform, hosting these discussions? That was something I was told I would never be able to do. I was told I'd never be able to be a social worker, even though I qualified, for reasons. And there's a whole story behind that. And my point is, no one's prescribing my path. And so I would encourage people to say, look, or encourage you as well, wherever you are, work with what you have, because you can do things that others won't. Some people are in placements and they're under a lot of pressure in statutory. And really and truly, depending on the amount of pressure they're under, they don't get to learn. So that's a downside to it sometimes. Do you have any other questions? I'm sure you do.
You covered a few of them within what we've just conversed about, but well, I do have a question for some of the students and qualified social workers. In terms of their uni journey, how did they deal with organizational disruption in the university? For example, starting placement late, staff leaving, not having, people to talk to in regards to what's happening within the university, because, I feel like some students, especially within my university at the moment, there's been a lot of disruptions. So it's kind of impacted us on placement. But how do you balance that? Like in terms of like stress relieving techniques and stuff like that, organization, can anybody give any advice?
Yeah. All right. So what you're asking is, how do we cope with the circumstances being dynamic, and there's lots of changes in regards to what again?
Any sort of, so for example, a lot of my colleagues, we've started placement quite late.
Right.
Staff shortages. People have left their roles, people, and it was quite just sudden, so some of us were actually supposed to be in statutory placements, and as a result of people leaving, some of us have now had to start months and months later.
Yeah.
As much as we had a chance to still be able to learn, still be able to go to university, it did set quite a few of us back in terms of having to start late. So the pressure was having to catch up, if that makes sense.
So, that happened to me as well, funny enough. I would say that in social work, this and worse is going to happen. So I would like your ability to kind of be flexible in your mindset and in your emotions is important. Again, it goes back to that thing of just accept what you have in your hand. The fact that you started placement is massive. The fact that you're on a degree is massive. You'll have cases where things aren't moving as efficiently as they should. Services don't start for people that you've referred them to or aren't available. You might even be in a situation where, like was happened to me, where I applied for a job, got on the job, but they're waiting for, I've had to wait 6 weeks for, what do you call it, references. What do? You get to choose what you do. You get to choose how you react and respond in those situations. You can chill or you can stress. It's all a choice. But when we're in practice, because it all boils down to what do you do when you're in practice? Because what we do now is also a reflection of what we might end up doing when we're in practice. And you cannot be freaking out in practice. You've got to hold it together. And so it is a lot of reflection, emotional intelligence, having a conversation with yourself about why are you doing this? Why are you feeling this way? And why are you reacting and overreacting? Because believe me, anything can happen. If you go for a locum job, what's happened to me is that they've just said, right, you got 3 weeks. That's it. Their project is done. I haven't gone for another job yet. And that has created a massive gap. And that's a gap in my wages as well. So these situations happen. You've really got to be emotionally intelligent, because when the job starts, a lot of that and worse is going to happen. And it's because you're working with people. How do you cope with stress and when someone pulls the rug out from under your feet? How do you cope with that? And that is all a part of the social work learning journey, to be honest. So you've got to be, I would say the number one tool is to be emotionally intelligent, which means to have conversations with yourself and be very in touch with your responses physically, emotionally, mentally, and have a conversation with them. I always say to people, when you are faced with these dynamics, sit down with the thing that you're most scared of and have a conversation with it. Face to face. What are you scared of? What are you worried about? What triggers you? Administration is always going to fail. Everywhere you go. Like, what are you going to do? And if you can't handle it, maybe social work isn't for you. I don't know if that helps, but that's a kind of a tough love kind of approach in a way.
No, it does make sense. It does make sense. Because really and truly, the same things that are happening in my university in terms of like admin issues, it's happened within my placement, in terms of IT problems. And it seems like everywhere has the same issues. So it does make sense.
Well, the main thing you do whilst you're there is at least do the work, which is I'm still going to build my portfolio. I'm still going to do my reflections. I'm still going to keep my diary. I'm still going to show my learning no matter what. And if I'm stressed this week, I'm going to write that down. And I'm going to write down and look for a strategy as to how to overcome it. That's you building your portfolio. So taking advantage of every situation to build your portfolio, because that's all the evidence you have for everything that you're doing. Do you know what I mean? So if it's a bad week or a bad 2 weeks, write it down. Yeah,
definitely. I must do. I do my reflections and I make sure my index of evidence is every single day. I fill that out. My practice educator, she's very stringent as well. she has practiced in social work for some years, but she's retiring soon. But she's on top of things, I must say. But it's definitely taught me. I think this course has taught me a lot about myself. And like you said, emotional intelligence is something that you're going to have to work on regardless. I think doing readiness for practice in my first year definitely made me reflect about myself, my personal assumptions of just life in general, and my view of professionalism, what I thought was professional before and how I need to continue in professionalism.
Talk about it now. What's the difference in your preconceived ideas of professionalism to now?
So within I must say sometimes I don't want to start, but basically I find something that was quite therapeutic to me in the past was being able to relate to people, to say, oh, yeah, I've gone through that, or, I've experienced that, don't worry. And I've come to know that in this field, you have to be so careful of what you relate to, especially with service users, because it can be dangerous. It can be very dangerous. And also it can be misleading. I found that now I won't say that it's going to change my personality. I've always been a bubbly person and I can still be a bubbly person, but there's boundaries and I have to know my boundaries, not just communicating with service users, but also with other professionals from a medical background. So everything's very different, it's such a different world. And with now me taking on the social model rather than the medical model, I can look at it from a different lens, and take a different professional stance, if that makes sense. I was coming in wearing a uniform and people were just assuming that I'm this professional and I've got all the tools and I'm able to, solve all the problems. It's similar being in social work, but we don't have a uniform. We rely on our skills and it has to remain professional, because sometimes not wearing a uniform, sometimes in some people's mine was always, you wear a uniform, you're going into work, people are perceiving you as this professional, like I said. Now I get told I look young, so people immediately assume that I'm young. They immediately assume that I don't know nothing about life. I might have conversations with people that think that I'm their same age group, and then I have to stop them and say, we're not the same age.
I'm not young.
We're not the same age. And I can't relate to what you're saying. And, I'm coming from a professional standpoint here. I'm not your friend, I'm a professional. And even within my project, there's people that are young and they assume that me and them are the same age group. And I have to tell them, I'm here to do something. I'm here to do my placement and I'm here as a professional person, I came in first week suited and booted and I was told, Jay, you don't have to come in like that, you can be casual. You can wear a tracksuit if you want. And I'm like,
What do you mean?
I don't want to give people the wrong idea. So I don't dress too casual, but I don't dress too professional. I kind of middle, I respect that boundary. So I've seen, I don't know, I feel like people just perceive me as young regardless, no matter how I dress, especially within my environment where I'm on placement, because I'm actually the youngest. So there's not much diversity within my team, So it doesn't matter who I'm coming into contact with, they just always seem to see me as a young person. But I have to build on that now, and I have to try and step into the role in a way that I don't come across maybe condescending or, but when I step in, the presence is that I'm here to do something and I'm not here to be, laughing and joking with everybody and, coming in unprofessional, because I don't know what it is about me, people just seem to think I'm a child.
Well, what's interesting is that everyone has their challenges with this because black, white, Asian, and Asian and black and white is a very diverse term in itself. And then you've got your height, your gender, your appearance, how much makeup you have on, your clothes, your body shape. All of these things give off and everybody has a different challenge as to how they're going to be perceived and how they manage how people perceive them. And over time, you may change some of what you're saying, but for now, and it depends on the type of service user group you're working with, determines how you function. I dress completely casually. And although I do dress maybe a bit younger than, I'm 46 in it. So although I do dress a bit younger than most people my age, slightly, I know it gives off an impression, but I'm happy to shrug that off. Even though I know it creates a level of judgment, I will just, I don't care. I've got a job to do. The amount that I relate to someone, it depends on who I'm talking to. So I kind of, I feel that out. Some people I don't trust, and some people I trust. And I'm very careful about what I say. And so I get where you're coming from. We have to play it according to how we feel comfortable because we have a job to do. So that's a journey. And I'm always going to be learning on that. Always.
Yeah, I can't wait for me, to get to a point where I am qualifying and I'm able to just learn and just take every, any sort of, prior assumptions. I need to let them go and just understand the world of social work and what it really is. And that's my aims at the moment, and hopefully I'll get a clearer understanding when I'm in a statutory role, to see the challenges and how I need to face those challenges in an effective manner.
Sure. Is that all your questions? It's not all your questions, is it?
I was thinking about the work-life uni balance. Where is that balance? Sorry, work-life home balance. Sorry, where is that balance?
So you're saying like when you're qualified, right, how do you balance? Because I have children. You might do. You have children?
I have one, and she is a big girl of secondary age. So,
Okay, so this is it. People say you can be very boundaried about your time, but then that would depend on your workload. And so you can say, well, I'm going to start at 9 and finish at 5. You can do that. But what if your workload or a situation demands more? You do get to choose how you deal with it. But then if you don't manage a situation that arises or that is in hand. So for example, I mentioned this in the live that we tried to do earlier on today, that last week I completed a lot of assessments. Luckily, none of them were returned, meaning, oh, we need to know more, or you didn't do enough of this or that. And that helps because that means that I'm doing all right. But doing all those assessments came at a price. It meant that I was up at 7 sometimes and finishing at 5.
Right.
And then going to bed and it's on my mind. Like last night I was thinking, about this case, let me write this for this assessment, let me write that for it. And I'm like, I should be sleeping. What am I doing up? We're talking about work-life balance. We haven't even started talking about family yet. I would like to say be boundaried, and people will tell you to be boundaried. And I think what it is this, especially depending on what team or what, children or families or adults and what team you go into will determine whether you can do that or not. Now, if we're like 20% down on social workers across the board and there's more risk coming in, if we have another pandemic, another lockdown, there's going to be more work coming through the doors. How do we balance that between staying sane and social workers are walking away from the job? So, which means our caseloads are higher than they should be. How would you manage that? The truth is you're going to have more work than you can do. That is social work.
Mhm.
If you're working in children and families, definitely you're going to have too much work in a sense. And what you've got to do is work out the most efficient way to work. So what I have learned to do is I've learned to write very efficiently, very quickly. I dictate my assessments into Microsoft Word.
Okay.
I can get a lot of information in a few seconds. Whereas before I was typing away, and my typing is fast, but it's got a lot of errors in it. So then I end up backspacing, backspacing, backspace. That's time. I just speak it. That has cut my assessment writing time down by about half.
Wow.
Yeah. It's difficult to do at first, but you have to get used to it. You start to speak very deliberately, very
Mhm.
clearly. Think before you speak. That has helped me massively. The other thing that I might do is I might do a few long days and do a short day.
Okay.
Because if I don't do that, I'm finished.
Mm.
Um, Also, when you're at work, if you're on duty, have a laugh.
Yes.
There are times when you say, right, I'm not starting until 10 o'clock. Phone is off. Do the school run. I'm switching off at 3 o'clock. So there are times when you have to make a deliberate attempt to do certain things
Mhm.
to save yourself because you will not last long.
Mhm.
But anywhere you go, it's like they're going to give you, you're like, I've got 2 hands, I can carry a bag in each. They're going to give you 3 bags.
Mhm.
You got to carry it because you're saving a life.
Of course.
How do you carry 3 bags? Well, you'll grow the muscles to carry those bags, but after a while, it comes at a price. So you
Mm.
have to do things in between now and again. Have no mercy on looking after yourself and saying, right, I'm taking my toil. Where I work, they give you every 10th working day, they give you a day off.
Okay.
Some give you every 9th day, they give you a day off, which is handy, to be fair. That's very handy. That's almost every other week.
Mhm.
So you got to find it. And if you find it's too much, go to another job.
Mhm.
Or at least first reflect on yourself. Like, what am I not doing for myself? Because the more you take is the more you can, the more they think you can give. So I'm gonna be honest with you. This is what it feels like. Some days, I remember a few weeks ago, I said to my colleagues, and I said it to them more than once over a period of weeks. I said, I actually have more work than there is time, and I have
Mm.
time limits on my work. You can't just hold an assessment forever. You've got a certain period of time, and if you've got 30 cases, 35 cases, you cannot do it and not pay a price.
Mm.
So how do you do it? You have to say something to someone. If your manager is someone who listens, great, you've got a good manager. If you don't say anything or you can't say anything, and this is what it is, then you need to find an efficient way of working.
Mhm.
Know yourself.
Mm.
When you're writing your assessments, look at it and think, well, how can I write this quicker? I use a template because it cuts my thinking time. I don't know what it is I've never worked in adults, but in children's, it's like there's a template that I use, and I just run through. Oh, I wish I had my thing here. No, I haven't got it. I run through my template, and I don't have to think too much.
Mm.
I dictate. I take random times out, which is necessary. If you don't have children, it's a lot easier. If you have a child and there are demands, take the time out, and you've got to balance. That is how you kind of get the balance. It's your own balance. I've got 3, you got 1, but your 1 could be more than my 3, so I can't judge. Or some people who have no children, or 4,
Mm.
we all may have the same demands at home.
Mhm.
A sick parent, money problems. So know yourself. You've got, this is your responsibility. PCF 1 professionalism means you've got to look after yourself. It's your duty to look after yourself. Oh, you still there? Hello. Hello. You're back. You're back. Say again?
I don't know what happened there.
You can hear me now.
Yeah.
Yeah, a part of your duty is to look after yourself.
Mm-hmm.
They haven't put much stress on that, but that is massive. That is the number one thing now as a social worker. I'm yapping on now. Have I answered in any way, or do you want more?
No, you've definitely answered. Do you have any questions for me?
Good. That's a good one. Okay. How are you balancing being a student and a mother? Are you working as well?
Yeah.
Right. How are you balancing those things now?
To be fair, when I first started, she was in a different school, and the demands were much different. You know, I had to be super mum, dropping her to school, getting myself to uni, work in the evenings. And this year, there's been balance. She is becoming more independent, which takes a load off of me, which is great. I'm still able to be a parent, but, I'm lucky in the sense that I have, a dynamic here that's, I won't say it's too demanding, but it's as she's gotten older, I can see she's become a bit more mature, a bit more understanding that what I'm doing here is for myself, but it's also for her. So she's got something to do when she goes to school in the day. I've got uni to go to. I've got work to do in the evening. She has work to do in the evening. The balance is there, but I have had to cut back work a little bit because I wouldn't be able to do my uni work. And I had to prioritize that. But I do make effort to, try and do things with her on the weekends and stuff. But I must say, it has been a challenge. It has been a challenge, but I am gradually finding that balance. Definitely. Definitely.
That is inspirational because, like you, as a parent, I studied as well. And it was like, oh, we had to plan before the semester, have we got school run covered? What's everybody's schedule weeks in advance? I remember there were days when my daughter would be like, my eldest would be like, oh, I haven't picked up she hasn't picked up her brother. And she's calling me whilst I'm in class and saying, I forgot, all right, gotta go, on placement, I'd be making phone calls, make sure you don't forget, or her mum will be making phone calls. Don't forget to pick up your brother. We got to make it happen because we're on a journey. And if I could just get through these, I did 4-year study, but if we could just get through these 4 years, which was crazy. And this is it. It's like not taking your eye off the ball. Like we've got a mission. Mum, you're there, you're studying because you're trying to elevate, climb the social ladder and just do better for yourself. And that is the thing that kept me going. So it's inspirational to hear you say like you've got a reasonably tight ship and you're doing a lot, and people can do it. If you can do what you're doing, most people can do it. That's encouragement, real encouragement.
Yeah. I think also what impacts parents that are studying is the age of the child. That's one of the biggest things. When I first had my first, try at university, when I was, doing, my clinical role, that was hard. She was in primary school. I had to think about the school run. I had to think about, I'm going to be doing a 12-hour shift today. Who's going to have her from 6 o'clock in the morning?
Right.
When I finish, it's 8 o'clock in the evening. Who's going to have her until 8:30? And then I literally sleep, get up, get her ready, drop her back to that person's house, don't see my child for the rest of the day, has dinner at the childminders or whoever she's with. And I was so out of touch with my role as a parent. It's like my only, role at that point was to go in and be in my clinical role. That I lost touch with being a parent. and I felt like everybody else was doing my job, and it made me feel bad. It made me resent myself, because as a parent you have a duty. You're always told, your children, they're understanding and stuff like that, but when they're young children, they don't understand. They don't understand, and they can have emotional outbursts. And I had to struggle with that, because she'd want to spend time with me, but I couldn't. So it manifested through her emotions and her behavior, and that was challenging. Now, and I think as well, I don't want to stereotype, but girls are very responsible when they get older. A lot of them tend to be a lot more responsible than, per se, I have nephews.
Yeah, boys.
Yeah, and they tend to be a bit more laid back, you know, don't bother them, let them just do what they want to do, sort of thing. Doesn't mean that they're misbehaving, but they're just too chilled. Whereas, having a girl, I can say she definitely understands, yeah, this is what we're doing. And she's very structured. She's a very structured child. So I can see that as time's gone by, certain things have changed dramatically. And I am grateful. I'm very grateful, because I see people on my course that do have, parental responsibilities, and they are struggling. But I've been through it, so I do try to share some advice to an extent. I would say, and I'm going to say this now, anybody that's watching this, if you are a parent, take advantage of the resources that you can. So any sort of grants that you can get for childcare, take advantage of that. If you can get childcare expenses paid for, whether it's through work incentives or through government incentives, do take advantage of that, because it will take some load off of you. And that doesn't only cover in term, that covers out of term as well. So for example, if you are required to go to uni in a period of time that your children are not going to be in school, you can access after school clubs, play schemes, and also tutoring as well, if you like. But as long as they're Ofsted registered, you do get some sort of help, but you will have to obviously give something towards it. But take advantage of the help while you can, because it will take a load off of you, and it has done for me, especially when my child was in primary school. So that's a big bit of advice that I can say to other parents that are watching this.
Yeah, that was important for us, because we used the extra funding for after school club. We
Mhm.
got that, which was massively helpful. So as much as the government's given us hell now, it's not all bad. They did, some of that policy was very helpful. So yeah, that's really good advice.
Mhm.
I've got another question for you, actually. What are your strengths and weaknesses when it comes to writing assignments?
Okay. So
What are you good at?
I am really good. My grammar is really good. So I can write well. I'm told that I can really write well. But uh, I have a disorder that I was recently diagnosed with, that could have been diagnosed with many, many years ago. I was a statemented child, and everything is now making sense to me. I have habits of writing from the back of the page when I'm writing to the front of the page. I
What
have
does that mean?
So, for example, I'll start here maybe, and then I'll start here, and then I'll fill in the gaps, right? So, a lot of the time, I write slower than others due to that fact. So, I have dictating software that I use, like you, and I'm able to just speak everything. One of my issues is if I feel like the assignment is really stressing me out, I'll shut off. I'll put the assignment down for a week. I'll look at it, come back, and then I'll start again. And then if I feel that fear, it's like I'm struggling with the fear of failing, because I love writing. I love doing assignments. But that of failure, to me, that will stop me from even continuing my work. But I always manage to get it in. But my downfall is the last week. That last week is that week that I will submit my assignment. So now I'm realizing, and this has been a habit of mine. This really has been a habit of mine in every single educational, environment I've been in. That fear of failure has consumed me. So I need to now work on that because I can't be handing in assignments in the last
Do
week.
you, do you know what I heard? I heard that I had someone say that procrastination is down to fear.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
I agree with that. I can recognize those feelings. It's interesting you say that because for me, for the 4 years that I did study, because I did a diploma, a social work diploma, and for the years that I did study, the one thing that I did was there was two things that I did, and I actually wrote an article that I haven't released the whole thing, but I'm going to do it very soon.
Uh-huh.
Um, the one thing that well, there was more than one thing. One thing that I did do was I did a little bit every day.
Mm.
So you, at the most, you'd have about 3 assignments probably going at once. Eventually, it builds up to about 3 at once. And I looked at it and I was like, it's actually not a lot of work. It's mindset. It just that's the way I said it in my head, right? And it's actually really helpful. I said that's not a lot of work. It's only 3 assignments. They're not due on the same day,
Uh-huh.
and you've got like 7, 8 weeks to do them, right? And then what I would do in class is I would be on my iPad. I would be building my assignment during the lesson.
Mm.
And I'd be, as they're talking to me, I'm pulling references from the internet for my assignment.
Uh-huh.
All I needed to do was put it together. On my way home, and this happened every time I went to uni, left uni, I would write a paragraph on Google Drive on my phone because all my assignments, even today, are on my Google Drive. And I just write a paragraph. Come a month before, I've got everything.
Yeah.
And it's not stressful. It's just a paragraph here, paragraph there, this perspective, that reference, this reference. And then I'd be like, and what I'd end up having to do was spend a lot of time bringing it down to the word count. I'd be like 4,000 or 5,000 words. And I'd be like, I've got to break this down every single assignment. And that is one thing that I was always consistent on. And you're talking to someone who I wasn't in school for 20 odd years before I went back. So I had to learn, I had to really analyze myself and say, how can I learn without the stress? So it was doing it on cloud and doing it in class. And that way I'd save time. So when I got home, I very rarely did work at home. The journey home from the uni is an hour and a half. And one bus was an hour. I'd be, 15 minutes. And that really helped me. And that way I didn't have to deal with the fear factor. In the class, I would decide on my topic.
Uh-huh.
I'd have it within the first 2 lessons. I'd be like, I'm doing this. Just make a decision and just stick with it. So yeah, those are a couple of tips that I give to people, and that helps get rid of the whole thing of leaving it to the last. Yeah, if that helps.
Yeah.
But I'll send you something as well, actually, privately to show you some of the things I did. Yeah, what was you going to say? Sorry.
No, I said that does help. It does help. In the first year, I was on point. On point. Since placement, it's like I'm just consumed with the fear of failure because we're coming so close.
So how many years are you doing this? Is it a master's?
No, I'm doing a BA. Yeah.
Oh, BA. So 3 years, yeah.
Yeah. So with that being said, it's like we're so close now to the end. More than halfway gone. So it's
How long you got left now?
Sorry?
How long have you got left?
Literally maybe like a year and a couple of months, if that. So we'll be finishing off the end of May for this year, and back probably first or second week of September. And even that, we're not going to be in university for that long because we're going to be on our 100-day placement.
It's going to be short.
Yeah, and it's super, super quick, and I know that this year, I feel like my lesson this year, I need to work on discipline. And when I mean discipline, I don't mean in punishment, because a lot of us associate discipline with punishment. I mean my boundaries in terms of setting the task and doing it. For example, we look at task centered approach. Why am I not applying that to myself? You know,
This is
why?
reflection. This is reflection now, because you're asking, it's like, well, why? You've got to answer that question.
Yeah, why am I not applying that to myself?
Mm.
But the tip that you gave me proves to be, it is helpful, because I look at myself and I look back and I'm reflecting now. I'm gonna reflect. When I do my assignments, I give myself so much work. I'm like, I'm gonna do this in 1 week. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do 400 words now, 400 words in the evening, 400 words in a couple of days, 400. And I feel like I'm just exhausting my brain at this point, you know? So I do think I'm gonna take up your tip on just keeping it to a minimal, trying to just get a couple of, sentences, not even a couple of paragraphs down, but a couple of sentences down. And I think that will help me overcome this fear.
Yeah. Do you know what? I can relate to you. The first 2 years, I was like, yeah. The third year, something said to me, oh, mate, it could all fall apart right now. And a lot of anxiety came on me.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't about my ability, it was about what I couldn't control. But when it came to the assignments, I'm like, I have to do this.
Mm-hmm.
I have to. And so I was like, very adamant, I'm going to be consistent. And I must say, for the whole 4 years, that's the only thing I was consistent in.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is about it is that there was no way I was going to fail.
Mm.
There was no way, not for being late. No
Mm.
way. I remember someone, because you have to submit on Moodle, right? I don't
Yeah.
know if you used to, okay. And one of my colleagues was saying to me, I submitted mine at 11:59. Not me. I was always like 5 days ahead, you know,
Mm-hmm.
because I've got to go to work.
Mm. I've never been one of those people, I must say. Even though I'll wait till the last minute, I won't wait until 11:59, because if you're not careful, everybody's going to be submitting their assignment in at that time, and Moodle will crash. Moodle has a tendency to crash. So, the chances of you getting that assignment in at 11:59 and it recording is very low.
Yep.
It's very low. So, yeah, there's to be method to the madness. There
Yeah.
to be
I
method.
guess what I wanted to do was end this session by asking you a question, and that is to give a tip to anyone who will hear this afterwards about being a student. What would be your number one tip?
Okay.
You weren't ready for that, but it's always good to get it fresh.
It might be 2 tips, but what
Go
I
on.
will say is, don't be too hard on yourself. Don't be too hard on yourself. When you start the course, it's about learning. You don't have answers. You're going to work with people from different walks of life, students, people that are professionals, and we can learn from everybody, you know? And I feel like sometimes we make mistakes on an everyday basis. It could be just having an assumption about something, but it doesn't mean that you're wrong for having that assumption. You can reflect on it, and that comes to my second point: reflection. Be on top of the reflections. Do not, especially in terms of readiness for practice, and sure you are on top of your reflections, because it will help you learn, and it's helped me learn. I didn't take much consideration to it in the first year, especially the first few months, because they said make sure you're on top of your reflections. But when you start to reflect properly, you understand why it's important to reflect. And I would also say, if you find a method that works for you for reflection, use it. Definitely.
Surprisingly, it's been inspirational. And whether I'm qualified or not, I'm listening to you and I'm still like, I'm learning from you. So well done, honestly, for where you're at this point. And I can't wait for others to hear this, really, because we need more students relating to each other and giving good advice and asking great questions. And I'm happy to help you at any time. So, just we've got a year and a bit to the next year is going to be so quick. I'll see you on the other side.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me.
Definitely. Yeah. Guys, listen, please tune into the Social Work Race podcast. You can get it on all platforms. I want to thank Jay for coming on, sharing her story. She's been really honest. And I guess what we have to do is have her back. We just have to have you back. They're going to demand it anyway. Thank you for your questions and your bravery to come on, because it's not easy to come up here,
Yeah.
Thank you all. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you soon.
All right then. Bye, guys.